Taylor here with Reality Canine. We do dog training that works in the real world. Have you ever told somebody, my dog just doesn't listen to me? He's stubborn, he's spiteful, whatever. Dogs don't feel spite. That is a human emotion. There are three reasons, three possibilities why your dog is not listening to you. Number one, your dog doesn't understand what you're asking them to do. Now, most of you think that you're not in that camp, but you actually are in that camp, the vast majority. Number two, your dog understands what you're asking them to do, but they're not sufficiently motivated to do it. And number three, your dog understands what you're asking them to do. They are sufficiently motivated to do it, but they're not physically capable of doing that. Now, usually that's in the case of an injury or severe exhaustion. I'm not really going to get into that one, but I do want to mention it just because it's worth keeping in the back of your mind. Always be fair. Always have an understanding of the situation, the context that your dog is in, obviously their health. You don't want to be asking your dog to do something that they physically cannot do or would hurt themselves doing, okay? So getting into the first two options. So number one, your dog does not understand what you are asking them to do. As I said, most of you think you're not in this camp. Well, there is a really easy way to test if that's the case. Go to the most boring room in your house so that the most interesting thing in that room to your dog is you and your treats, okay? Put your hands behind your back so that you can't do any gesturing, prompting, luring. Look up at the ceiling and say, dog's name, command. If your dog immediately responds and goes into the command, congratulations, they understand what you are asking them to do. Now, if you have to repeat yourself several times, right, if you have to start looking at them, using facial expressions, if you have to take your hands out from behind your back and do some prompting, do some luring, your dog does not understand fully what you are asking them to do, right? Because the reality is, most of you, right now, if I was to ask you to tell your dog to sit, you would have to do this, right? You'd have to go Ripple, sit, good boy, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's fine, but they're not fully understanding the word sit, right? That is our verbal cue. That is the command. Everything else extra that I have to do to get him to sit, right? Whether it's holding a treat in my hand, moving my hand up like that. Some of you are even pushing your dog's butt down, right? That's definitely not part of the verbal cue sit, right? Ripple free, good boy, right? So what my goal is here, right, is that you're able to ripple, sit, good boy, just the command, right? Ripple free, okay? Now, if your dog is not responding to you doing that in that context, there could be many reasons why, okay? We could break down a lot of them, okay? Are you marking the behavior? Whatever your marker is, you could be saying good boy, good girl, using a clicker. I don't really like clickers. It's just another thing to carry, but you do you, man. You're using a clicker, saying the word yes, whatever your marker is, whatever your indication is that your dog performed the correct behavior, which you then follow up with a treat. Are you doing it as soon as they do that command, right? So the second his butt hits the floor, am I saying good boy, okay? That could be an area of, struggle to look at. Similarly, are you saying, good boy or whatever your marker is when the dog's not doing the command, right? So a lot of times clients, I'll tell him to sit and he sits and then he breaks his sit and I'll keep saying good boy. Don't do that. Your good boy or your marker is showing them what the right answer is. That's one area that could be preventing your dog from understanding what you're asking them to do. The next is, like I was talking about, those physical prompts, right? When we're teaching a dog a command, we are having them follow a treat vast majority of the time, right? So if I wanted to teach him down, for example, he knows down, but ripple down, I would be doing that. Good boy. Ripple free. All that movement is what I initially need to teach him the command, but it eventually needs to go away. So how do I do that? I start fading it away, right? I give him the verbal cue, wait for him to do it. He doesn't do it, I repeat it, and then give him the smallest version of that prompt I can. I do that until the prompt goes away entirely. We call that fading, okay? So we don't want any physical prompts, and we want to make sure that we are marking the behavior we want and we're not marking the behavior when we don't want it, okay? The last kind of part of that is, does the dog understand that remaining in the command gets them what they want, right? So it's not just, you know, sit and then they get up. Are we showing them that when they stay in that sit, they keep getting treats, right? So like, Ripple, sit, good boy, good boy, good boy. And I would work up to good boy. I would work up to him remaining in the command longer and him not needing good boys and treats so often in order to remain in the command. Good boy, Ripple, free. All right. So those are a couple areas to look at if you're finding that you are in that camp of your dog does not understand what you're asking them to do. Now, let's say you have that dog that the first time you set it, and you can replicate it too, you know, hands behind your back, looking at the ceiling, you give the dog a command and they do it, and you can replicate that when you're in your most boring room of your house. Now, let's say that you take that exact dog and you go to a park. And you try and do the same thing, and now the dog's not really on the same page as you. They're not listening, okay? That is not a problem of the dog not understanding what you're asking. That is a motivation problem, okay? There are a million things in the world that are more interesting than you and your treats, okay? I go to a park, there's squirrels, there's other dogs, there's people, there's fire hydrants, there's smells, okay? All of these things could potentially be way more motivational, way more interesting to my dog than me and my treats, okay? So that becomes an issue of motivation. Now, there's two ways that we can motivate a dog, and the goal here is that we become more motivating than all the other stuff in the world, okay? There's two ways to motivate a dog. There is reinforcement. In layman's terms, we would call that rewards. And there is punishment. Now, I recognize that punishment has a negative connotation in layman's terms, but I am using the scientific, psychological definition of punishment within the context of operant conditioning. That's what we're doing when we're teaching a dog obedience, is operant conditioning. So that definition is anything that discourages a behavior, okay? So if you get in your car right now and you start driving without buckling your seatbelt, you're gonna hear a ding, 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 ding. That is, by definition, a punishment. It's something that is discouraging a behavior, okay? So think about when you were a kid, if your parents wanted you to clean your room and there were other things that you would rather be doing than cleaning your room. Your parents could do two things, essentially. They could say, if you clean your room, I'll let you have ice cream after dinner. Or they could go the opposite way and say, if you don't clean your room, you're grounded. Right, a reward and a punishment. If they really wanted to be motivational, they could do both and be double as powerful, right? If you clean your room, I'll give you ice cream, and if you don't clean your room, you're grounded. It's essentially the same thing in dog training, right? When we reach the point where the dog understands what's being asked, meaning they've been taught the behavior, we then reach the point where we have to show the dog that it's in his best interest or her best interest to perform the behavior and continue doing the behavior, okay? So, yeah, you go boy. So, within the context of rewards are pretty easy, right? Is it worth it to your dog to have the thing that you're offering them as a reward, okay? Now, most people are very limited in this framework. They think that a reward is just treats. Most of the time it's treats, and very often very limited treats. Pro tip, most dogs don't like the crumbly cookie type of treats for training. It makes them thirsty fast and they get tired of them. Use kind of the softer beef jerky type treats. Most dogs like those a lot more. You also don't just have to think in context of treats. There are other things that could motivate a dog in terms of rewards. Your praise could be very motivational. Toys, obviously. Play, obviously. And even, think about this just strictly like, I'm walking Ripple, and Ripple starts pulling on the leash, so I stop walking. If Ripple stops pulling on the leash, I could reward him by continuing to walk, right? He gets what he wants. A reward is anything that encourages a behavior. He gets what he wants. So That's the reward side. Now, very often, and especially when you get into areas of genetic propensity, there are things that are always going to be more motivational to your dog than almost any reward that you could offer them. For example, if you have a dog that has been bred to have very high prey drive, they will find it intrinsically rewarding to chase something that looks like prey, for example, a squirrel. There's almost no reward that you can offer a dog that gets genetic reward from chasing something. There's almost nothing you could offer that dog that's more valuable to them than getting to chase that squirrel, right? Whatever it is, squirrel, prey, whatever. So that's where the other side has to come in. You have to show the dog, hey, you don't clean your room, you're grounded, type thing. So that's where we bring in corrections. Now, there's a humongous caveat with corrections, and it's that a lot of people, including dog trainers, screw them up. Okay, if you take any training collar, I don't care what it is, an e-collar, a prong collar, a star mark collar, a halty, a gentle leader, any training collar, and you put it on a dog and you do not teach them what the correction is and how to turn it off. That's the big part, how to turn it off. If you don't do that, you are going to screw up your dog, okay? It could potentially be very bad. You can make your dog shut down, go into fight, flight, freeze, and if they don't do it, you know, at low levels, they almost certainly will do it at high levels. So you want to make it as ethical a process as possible, as Lima a process as possible, and you want to start at very low levels, show your dog what the correction is, how to escape it. I can talk more about how to do that in later videos, but essentially what I'm saying is if I give Ripple a command, right, Ripple, place. Good boy. Now, in my commands, the command is forever until I say free, right? I don't do stay here, right? So if he breaks right now, when I haven't said free, he's breaking a command. The rule here is, if you break, you're gonna get a little pump on this plastic training collar. It's a star mark collar, little leash pumps, and it turns off when you go back in the command. So let's see if he'll break. This is what we've been working on. So he's on to me, folks. Oh. 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 What's up? Place. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Ripple free. Just little pumps on this little plastic training collar. And you can see how he's been shown the immediate answer to making this go away is just to go back into command. And I'm helping him out by repeating it for him, right? You know, in case something's going on, he didn't remember. So he's learned how to turn this correction off. But in that way, I have now given him another motivator on the opposite side of the reward to get him to listen when maybe he rather wouldn't, okay? So it's just like the kid cleaning their room. You go into your place and you keep staying there, you're getting treats, you're getting praise, eventually I'm gonna let you play tug. You choose to break, you're gonna get little leash pumps that are annoying, right? Both sides are becoming motivators. Now, obviously you have to work up to these things, you have to expose your dog to different situations, but at a macro level, that is how motivation works, okay? So hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully, you know, there's obviously way more that goes into it. You could break things down into much smaller steps, but from a macro level, hopefully this has helped you identify, you know, what camp am I in? Does my dog understand what I'm asking them to do? And if not, why? Maybe my dog understands what I'm asking them to do, but they're not motivated. If they're not motivated, why? Okay? I hope this was helpful for you. If you'd like more help, you know, breaking down some of the problems you're having in your training, you know, reach out, realitycanine.com. We do virtual training. Feel free to comment down below, and we'll see you next time.